Hey everyone, it's Coeval here again. Here I have the much anticipated, long-awaited Arcane Flash tutorial for you guys. We're gonna do a quick rundown of the spell basics and kind of fundamentals, and then I'll go through 15 different kind of fun strategies that you can use, ways that you can use Arcane Flash to get an upper hand in actual games. Most of this will be done in Sandbox, but I'll also have a few fun clips from games here and there that I can show you. So, what is Arcane Flash? Well, looking at the description here, the uses are infinite. It's a personal 15 arcane damage spell. Blast your enemies out of the arena with this spell, which creates an intense ball of energy that knocks everyone but yourself far and wide. So what can you do with Flash? Well, three main things you can do are dig and clear space. Say I have an opponent on the side, and I wanted to dig to them. Just flash to them, real easy. Another purpose of flash is to sink opponents. So say I want to go over and I know that this is sinkable, I will just launch him off the map. And a third purpose of flash that you can do is charge your arcane minions if you have arcane minions. So you pull out an egg here, say you want to dig as well, and you just want to charge up your arcane minion too. Get two things done with one spell. You just flash the arcane minion, real easy, and it does 15 heal instead of 15 damage. So, one sort of basic element of the physics of flash is that the center point of flash is outside the player. So if you look at this indicator, the center point is probably about halfway along the indicator, so where the orange turns to yellow. What that means, that the center point's outside the player, is that you don't necessarily want to aim the flash directly toward your opponent. So let's say that this guy is hugging me. I would not necessarily want to aim the flash like this, because the center point is further away from my center, and the angle's not going to be consistent, right? So if you can see, like, if I'm going to flash him off the map, you would expect, oh, he's going to go in that direction. He's going to go in the direction of the indicator. But that's not necessarily true. If I do flash, you see how he flies lower? He flew a lot lower there, so just, you don't need to understand the physics of it and, like, you know, the center point and all that stuff, but the main sort of takeaway from this is that you want to be a step away from the player, or, you know, maybe you're hugging them. If you're hugging them, you would just want to, like, aim the flash this way, and that way you can have a little bit more of a consistent launch path. So yeah, just take a step away, maybe something like this. Instead of hugging him and doing this, you would just go here, and then if you're further away, then it is more consistent. Like, he is going to pretty much, this opponent is going to pretty much fly in the direction of that indicator, as you can see here. So I click, and yeah, he pretty much just follows the indicator's path into the water. So yeah, that's just a quick kind of rule of thumb, or, you know, trick when you're flashing. Ideally, try not to be hugging the opponent. So as you kind of saw from the two tests that I did, there are two main ways that you can flash people that are real easy and consistent. You launch them up, you aim down. So any of these downward angles, the opponent's going to be launched up. Again, for example, if I want to wait for his gate to come back, for example, I am going to launch him up by aiming down this way. And I won't go through every single angle, but you can experiment with the different angles in Sandbox yourself or in games. Or if I wanted to launch him downward, I would aim up. So I'm going to aim this up, and he's going to be flown in a downward angle. So, and one other note about Arcane Flash before we get into these strategies is that it doesn't get weaker the further away your opponent is. So let's see if I can give you guys an example of this real quick. let's say I'm really far, and this is pretty far, right? You would think, like, common sense wise, it would make sense if, oh, I'm casting this spell from further away, and the center point is further away from the opponent, it's not going to be as strong. But that's actually not the case with Flash. So if I want to Flash here, oh, I forgot to extend, but let me just do that again. If I want to Flash here and I hit Alt, so my center was way far, but Zizuma went flying off the map. So yeah, just a quick principle, Flash doesn't get weaker at the further away that your opponent is, like it might with other spells. So with that quick introduction, we're going to get into 15 easy Arcane Flash tips and strategies. I won't be doing this all in one take, I edited each individual one, so just so you guys know. And yeah, let's get right into it. Alright, here we are for strategy number 1, which is flashing someone from far away using Extend. So if you guys didn't know, Flash can actually launch an opponent without destroying the terrain that they're standing on, which it's not very intuitive to think that you could just flash someone from so far away, but it's actually possible. So here's a great example. You've got an opponent that's up at the top of the tree, you can't get all the way up there, and you're wondering, I don't want to burn my flight, I don't want to burn glides, so I'm just going to aim the Flash in that general direction. It's just going to launch him, the exact extend angle isn't the most important here, but you just want to make sure that you're extending so the center point's further away. You click, and there you go, he sunk. And notice that the opponent was here, and he got flown. So the terrain that he was standing on actually did not get destroyed. So yeah, there's tip number 1. Alright, here we are with strategy number 2, which is that you can flash people off minions. So to flash people off minions, you should either hug the minion or get pretty close to the minion. Otherwise, the game physics, they won't always be in your favor. So we'll just give a few examples here. Say I've got an opponent mounted on the Pegasus, I want to flash them off. And obviously the Pegasus isn't going to be flashed off because it's a flying minion, but it is strong enough to fling the opponent off the minion into the water. If you're too far away, let's say you're trying to flash from like here, that could work with Extend. You see how I used Alt to extend that and knock? But sometimes, like if I'm even further away and I try to flash off, if you're outside the flash's radius, or you see that animation, the flash animation, then the Pegasus is just going to move and the player won't move. But yeah, in general, try to be as close to the minion as possible. If you can't get very close, hit Alt to get that extra power. And if you're really far, just avoid it. Try a different move. I could also do like a reverse flash here. Killed the Pegasus, but yeah, you can knock them off minions any direction if you're close. Pretty sweet strategy, and that's about it for number 2. Alright, strategy number 3, which is flashing through mountable minions. So something that might not always click immediately is that a player can also be flashed through their own mountable minions. Not your opponents, but their own minions. So minions that's not on your team or that's not mountable will act as a solid object, but a flying minion, you can go straight through it. And pretty unique interaction there, I'll show you what I mean. So let's say that this opponent doesn't want to be knocked and they also want to develop a minion, so they decide to summon their Pegasus. They're thinking, oh, the Pegasus is going to be solid, I'm just going to hit it. And so I'm preventing the knock. Well, unfortunately, they would be sadly mistaken. Because what you can do is just flash them through their Pegasus. You saw him go straight through the Pegasus into the water. But something to note here too is that, let's say that's my Pegasus, so I get a Pegasus out. And if it's the opponent's Pegasus, that's in the way. Then you can't knock it. Watch this, try to flash. Nope, solid object. So anyway, cool mechanic, it works for all flying mountable minions. What are some others? Like Pegasus and Reindeer, I guess, are two that come to mind. So anyway, something that's not very intuitive, and you can catch your opponent off guard if they're trying to block sync with their own flying minion. Just flash them through it. Easy. That's it for number 3. So strategy number 4, very similar to strategy number 2, which was flashing characters off of mountable minions. Here's how the interaction works with flashing minions off mountable minions. So in this case, a paladin being flashed off with a Pegasus. Initially, I thought that this would work just exactly how it does with players, but in short, it doesn't. There's some sort of, I don't know, weird glitch or bug. It doesn't look very natural when I'm flashing this paladin off. It just stops at the edge of the Pegasus. You'll see what I mean. So when I try to flash, the paladin's just like, nope, I'm not moving. Tough shit, sorry. You're not flashing me off. Suck it. And any angle that you try, like if I want to reverse, nope, he's like, nope, I'm sticking with my buddy. We're bros, I'm not gonna move. So, in short, I guess I just discovered this. Don't try to flash minions off their own mountable minions. It's not gonna work too well. I wonder if, so the Pegasus is at just 5 health. If the Pegasus dies, does the paladin fly? Let's see here. Nope, still gets caught, quote unquote, on the Pegasus there. So, in short, guys, I guess just avoid that. So we'll go straight into strategy 5 here, actually, because it's real easy, simple to illustrate, and that's flashing heavy minions. So there are 2 heavy minions in the game, which you just can't flash. Don't ever try to flash these, unless in very rare circumstances where they're at the very edge of the map and you can just flash them off with just maybe they only have to move an inch or so. So if I try to flash this bear, which is a new spell from the Book of the Wilds, let's see, you're like, oh, I can just knock him off the map real easy. Nope. Impossible. So, same thing with this Dark Knight. So if I want to flash the Dark Knight off, you'll see what happens. He just says, no, I'm gonna stay here. Sorry. Good luck. Anyway, those are the 2 heavy minions in the game. In very rare cases, you can flash them off if they're at the edge of the map. Like if the Dark Knight's all the way in this corner here. Say I had a Dark Knight on the edge. In a rare case, I might be able to flash, but I'm not even sure that this is close enough. Let's see. Okay, it is. So, yeah, if the Dark Knight's at the very edge, then yeah, you could flash it off, even though it's heavy. But in any sort of normal, natural, flashable spot for light minions, you're not going to be able to flash heavy minions off at all. So, alright, that's about it for strategies 4 and 5. Strategy number 6 is sinking an opponent who is hugging you. As I mentioned, I believe in the intro real quick, like, flashing this way is not very reliable. The opponent may go a little bit lower, may go a little bit higher. You might knock them in the opposite direction. It's not reliable at all. So one easy way to flash an opponent who's hugging you is just aim in the opposite direction. So flash is going to knock the opponent outward, even if the center point is not like on the opponent. So you can flash here, and what I like to do is I just mirror this angle. So you see that I have the indicator aimed toward the player. I just mirror that angle and do that on the bottom left. And you basically think of a line, picture a line through the center of both of the players from the indicator. And you hit this flash and you're able to knock knock the opponent. And they fly pretty much in a straight line that way. So another example would be, like, let's say the opponent hugs you here. Obviously, if you can move out, you could move out and make an easier flash, but let's say you don't have that option, you're trapped. You just aim it away from the player, like this. Again, you mirror that angle, so I know that the player is angled about this way. I just mirror that angle down here, and flash them off. So that's a quick guide to how to flash someone off who is hugging you. Just remember to aim the flash opposite of the opponent, and you'll have pretty good success. Alright, here we are with strategy number 7, which is reverse flash using extend. You don't always need extend to reverse flash, but it can be helpful to just, again, get that center point of the flash beyond the player, and then it'll knock the player in the opposite direction of the indicator. So like, this indicator's on the left side, it's going to knock the player to the right. So, and here I can't flash him to the left, right, because that tree's in the way. So I have to do a reverse flash, I hit Alt to extend, and boom, there it is, off the map. One other example that I'll show real quick is, let's say you wanted to flash the player to the left instead of the right, and you couldn't get up. For example, maybe if like there was some terrain in the way or a tree and you weren't confident, and you needed to flash him the opposite direction, you again just do a downward angle, try to get the center point past the player, and the way I kind of measure that is if the indicator, the end of the indicator is past the player, then the center point of the flash is past the player. So that's one way that I kind of roughly measure it. So I get this extend angle, click, and there he goes, flashing off the left side of the map. So that was a quick introduction to reverse flashes. Feel free to do some experimenting in Sandbox to get all these different angles, to learn all these different angles, and yeah, we'll move on to strategy number 8. Alright, strategy number 8 is to launch a player roughly in a straight line, horizontal line. So it pops the player just slightly up above 180 degrees, and an easy way to do this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I do 5 from the bottom, so I just counted the iterations there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this one will pop the player up slightly. If you want to see a use case for this, the first video that I ever made, I think I have an example of that versus grapple. I could be wrong there. I think that there's an example there. So yeah, go check out that video, see if you can find a flash that I did that's in this fashion. So click there, and it pops the player up just slightly above 180 degrees, and there you go. Kind of a neat strategy. Sometimes the 4th from the bottom works, so let's say, but it won't always. So you can just kind of see like what does a fail look like, or in this case, does it work with 4 from the bottom? Yeah, it does. So it won't always, but you have a little bit of flexibility with this, and we can just try, now that we're here, just try 3 from the bottom, see if that works as well. So you just go down here, find the flash that's facing right at the steepest angle. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so maybe about at 3 it doesn't quite work, but it also depends a little bit on the positioning of your player. Like if I'm more this way, if I'm more to the left, like these flashes won't work because I'm blocking the path that the player needs to go to be flashed. So I would generally want to be on the side of the player that they're not getting knocked. So if I want to knock them to the left, for example, if I want to knock them to the left, I would want to be a little bit more on the right when I do this flash, just so that I don't get in the way of the knocking that I'm doing. So yeah, just one more time. And you notice it did pop him up a little bit, so if it went in a straight line, I actually might have failed that one, because there's that little lip there. But anyway, pretty sweet strategy there. And yeah, we'll move on to number 9. Number 9 is sinking a towered player on the side. This is the simplest sink that you'll see often, especially in grassy games. Doesn't require any extend, doesn't require any kind of maneuvering or a specific angle. The goal here is not to flash the player, so you don't want your indicator up here at all. The goal is to flash the land so that the player falls. And you'll fall too, so you can flash this way, and if you do that, then you're gonna fall. Or if you wanted to, you would get out here. Like, let's say you don't want to sink, then you just position yourself next to the land. You want to make sure that you're not so close that the tower would fall on you. And then in this case, I actually still don't think we need extend. Here, you just flash the land under the opponent, and boom, they sink into the water. It's very situational for these sinks. Sometimes you'll need extend, sometimes you won't. Sometimes you'll want to sink yourself, and then that way you can teleport back up top or something in the same turn. But anyway, that's the real quick guide to how to sink someone who's towered on the side. And it doesn't only work on grassy, it works on any other map as long as they're close to the water and they don't have some sort of frost familiar or anything like that that allows them to walk on water. Alright, here we are with the next strategy, which is sinking an untowered player. I made it a little bit trickier with these trees in the way. You might see a real game situation where you're not able to sink the player off the map, but you still want to sink them into the water on the map. So an easy way to do this, where they don't go flinging into the left, to the right, they don't have an opportunity to catch on any terrain, they literally just drop straight into the water, is you just extend the flash directly into the player. So check this out. See, he just drops. Sink. Just like you gave him, dumbbells, and he just sank into the water and drowned. Okay, that was a bit dark, but it is what it is. So the reason that you extend is because if you don't extend, the player's going to be flung to the right, to the left, wherever, and they could catch on land. You could be risking them not getting sunk. So if I just flash without an extend, did you see how he moved to the left and then hit the wall before sinking? It's possible that the player could catch on land and then you don't get the sink, and then, sometimes when you're going for a sink, if you don't do it, you're dead. And so you have to be sure that these are going to work. Also a quick note, if you want to do it from the bottom, it doesn't quite work as normal. So let's just make sure that tree is dead. If I'm under the opponent and I try to extend and sink, let's see, like right here, if I want to have him drop and I try to extend sink here, he's just going to drop onto me because I'm in the way. So I would want to move out of the way and then just flash right under him. He hits the top and then sinks to the bottom into the water. So anyway, that's a quick crash course on how to sink untowered players. That extend trick of extending it into the player, not intuitive at all, but yeah, they just drop, and you don't have any risk of them catching on any land or going all the way to the left or the right or wherever. So cool trick. Alright, we're on to strategy number 11, which is sinking a player with glide. Glide, as you might know, it starts active on your turn and ends on your turn. Gives you the ability to glide for one turn. While you're gliding, you'll attempt to turn around while going out of bounds. This spell doesn't end your turn. So what that turnaround while going out of bounds means, just to educate a little bit here, is that if I'm jumping, I will turn around. So kind of cool, if you guys didn't know. Now why I'm jumping so high here is because I have the frost familiar, but you won't normally jump quite that high. So, flashing a player with glide. If you just try to normally flash someone, they're gonna wrap back. And so you're thinking, well, what can I do to flash a player with glide? Sometimes you might be able to knock them if you can flash them high enough. One strategy to try, which is not consistent, would be to just launch them way up high and then they go down and okay, I had the Frost Familiar on, but that would have been a sink, right? So sometimes that works. It's very inconsistent to just flash a player way up to the top of the map. But at the worst, you can also sometimes get a flash where they'll end up on the side here. So you'll have someone, you'll be able to flash and they'll end up like here. And then that's great for against an opponent with the glide book because they often don't have flight. So if you can force them to the side, it's going to be great for you. But again, not very consistent. So yeah, it's not guaranteed. But if you have the right positioning, you might be able to get an opportunity to flash someone off with glide. And one way, or one example of this, would be like if they're on the edge of the map. Yeah, let's say that this guy is like over here, and a flash that I like to do that I've discovered is, just as I mentioned right in the very beginning of the video, in the intro, you flash upward to launch the opponent down. And the thing is, if you launch the opponent down with enough force, glide doesn't have enough time to wrap them back like a boomerang, and they'll hit the water. So here's an example there. Oh, he didn't have the glide activated. I'll activate it real quick. So yeah, say this guy has glide on, and you try to knock him off. And the thing is, like, it tries to boomerang back, but you flung them into the water with enough force that they didn't make it back into the map. So pretty cool strategy there. And I think we'll have a couple other examples with glide. Oh, I have one from a game that I'll put right after this strategy that I can show you guys, and it just demonstrates a player that is glided, just like in any sort of spot like this, and then the opponent flashes the player and they end up on the side of the map here. So very rarely, but sometimes you can not sink a glided player, but force them to the side, so flash them such that they float all the way to the side of the map and then they get kind of stuck. This is pretty tricky to do and also inconsistent, but Falco sees an opportunity here to execute the move. He flashes them at a pretty low angle, and I think that low angle is what barely allows him to flash Nest to the side there. So anyway, not really like a trick or strategy to that. Flashing him at a low angle is one way that you can try to do it consistently, but it all depends on the map gen and where the players spawn. So anyway, there's a quick example. Alright, for this strategy I'm going to show off a few popular extend angles that I use a lot. And whether your opponent's facing left or right, it's this one, second from the bottom, third from the bottom, and fourth from the bottom. These all launch your opponent pretty high up, and it is practical to be able to avoid terrain. This fourth from the bottom one is the most risky one, because sometimes it'll reverse flash your opponent, which is not what you want, but in rare cases it can be really clutch and it'll surprise your opponent guaranteed. So this third from the bottom is launches the opponent a little less high, second from the bottom a little bit less high, and then first from the bottom a little bit less high there. And the rule for these is that I like to get level with the opponent first of all. So we just adjust him a little bit here, and let's say you wanted to flash him off, you just get aligned roughly. Okay, we're almost there. Alright, that should be good. And then here, I think that this third one should launch him. And he barely skims the tree there, and he's able to be sunk. So I'm not sure if the other angles would have worked there, but I can test those just so you guys get a feel for. We'll just replicate that action, right? And I'll use the different angles to kind of show you how they work. So that was the third from the bottom one. We spawn him again here. Get lined up, roughly. Not quite lined up, but almost. Alright. And let's say we would want to use the first one. You see that, okay, it flung him up, but it wasn't high enough. And if we want to go back and try the second one, as well as the fourth, you can compare the angle there. So we again spawn this guy right here. Get lined up. And then, let's see, we tried the first one, now we try the second one. Almost, but not quite, right? And then the only one left to try would be the fourth one, which I said was kind of risky, might result in a reverse flash in some cases. But we'll see how it works for this particular one. So you spawn them right there. Once again, get lined up. Not quite. Alright, there we are. And then let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes, like I said, that'll reverse flash the opponent. We'll see if it works here. Okay, so you see how that one was a much higher angle. Still didn't quite work to knock, but one other thing I wanted to show you guys was doing this when you're not flighted makes it a little bit easier. So, say you've got an opponent right here, and this will help you just kind of compare the angles. You want to just be lined up with the opponent here, and here's the first one. Pops them straight up in a diagonal angle to the right, and then the second one pops them at a little bit of a sharper angle. You can avoid more terrain that way. The third one again, you're going to get an even sharper angle here where you can avoid a tree or terrain that's in the way. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, even higher. And then in some rare cases, you might be able to use this fourth one. But again, a little bit risky. Kind of depends on the setup. So you get 4 ticks to the right, and that's the sharpest angle, high angle that you can do. If I try to do the 5th from the right, I'll show you guys. Then, yeah, let's just get... If I try to do the 5th from the right, it's going to start to reverse flash the opponent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At this point, it's not knocking the opponent to the right. It'll knock them back to the left, so that won't work. So anyway, those were some creative flash angles. There's one in the thumbnail where I use the 4th from the right to knock someone that I'll show at the very end of the video, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that. Yeah, don't just skip to the very end of the video. That'd be kind of lame. Stay with us for a few more minutes to get this the rest of this tutorial done. I promise you guys will discover something that you haven't learned yet. So anyway, those are the 4 kind of flash angles that I like to use often to avoid terrain. It does take some time to kind of visualize exactly when you can use certain angles, but I would say the second and third ones are 2 of the most popular. The 4th is a bit risky, and the first doesn't do too well to avoid terrain, but it does pop that player, you know, up in a 45-degree angle, whichever way they are being knocked. So it can be useful to just pull out in a game and kind of surprise your opponent. So that's it for this strategy. Alright, for this strategy, flashing players through land. It's a bit more unintuitive. You might think, oh, there's that ice shield in the way, I'm not able to flash this person off. But what you can keep in mind is that flash has a radius, where in that radius it destroys everything. And it does this before the player is knocked, or like at the same moment that the player is knocked. So the land in the flash's radius is not going to hinder the player. It's not going to hit the player. So this ice shield right here is within the flash's radius, so you can actually knock the player off with just a simple flash like this. Here I like to aim it toward the player. I know that the angle can be a little bit unpredictable or inconsistent, but I believe if you don't aim it toward the player, the radius won't knock. But we can test that right now actually here. So how I would do it is just aim directly toward the player, which I said not to do in most cases, but in this case, since you're flashing through land, the goal is to get the land to disappear. And then after the land disappears, yeah, you obviously want to knock your opponent. So I would just click like right about here, and then all that land goes away and the player gets knocked. Now, if you don't aim it toward the player, you might end up having a different result. Because the center point of the flash is down here, right? And yeah, as you can see, there's a little bit of the ice shield that was left if you aim away from the player. So that's a little bit of an exception to the principle where I said, you know, if you hug an opponent, aim the flash opposite of that player. If there's land that you're trying to destroy, that it needs to be destroyed in order to knock the player, then you can aim it toward the player like this as an exception. So that's a cool strategy to be able to flash a player through land, and you can even do it in certain way in other more subtle sort of instances here. Like for example, you might think that the player would get like caught on this tree here, but you can actually just use one of these extend angles that I've showed you guys. I would go probably 1, 2, probably 3 here, third from the right, and then it'll destroy the land that's in the way and knock the player, and again at a very high angle, which is, yeah, quite useful in most games. Can again just surprise your opponent. They think they're not flashable, and you are able to sink them quite easily. So anyway, that's it for the flashing players through land. The ice shield was just the easiest way that I could explain it, but it works with any land as long as that land is within the flash's radius. So yeah, experiment with it in Sandbox, see if you can get some creative knocks. Yeah, it can be fun. Alright, here we are for number 14, and this strategy is putting a heavy minion on your head to block a flash. So using heavy minions to block a sink. This doesn't always work, which is the first kind of thing to say. If I was to try to sink this player, I would want to aim not upward. I would not want to aim into the Dark Knight. If I aim into the Dark Knight, like let's say that this Dark Knight is positioned a little bit better. So yeah, it's positioned to like prevent the sink off to the right. If I aim into the Dark Knight here, it will not sink this player. So see that? See how it prevented? So the Dark Knight was on top and it prevented the sink. But if they get the position off just a little bit, you'll be able to get a sink. So let's say they position it just like maybe they're on the directly over the center, or maybe just a little bit to the left. You can actually just aim, just don't aim upward, just aim like directly 180 degrees or maybe even a little bit downward, and then the flash will propel the player in that straight line direction. And also the Dark Knight does jump a little bit, so you'll see here that you're able to actually knock the player sometimes, even if they have a heavy minion on their head. In that case, I actually knocked the heavy minion too, so yeah, but in some cases, this can be very helpful, just in like deterring your opponent from even trying a flash. If they are not in a position where they can like easily maneuver themselves to, you know, work around that Dark Knight. This is my Dark Knight, but I can still show. Like, if they're not in a position where they can easily maneuver themselves to like get the perfect angle, then you just want to prevent just a basic flash. This is a real easy way to do it, and yeah, it can be a great practical technique in your games that can, yeah, very well may turn the tide in some games. Kind of a cool strategy that not a lot of people use. I think I've seen Nicaray use this once or twice. I'm sure they've used it more than that, but I felt this was necessary to put in just so you guys know. It's a little bit more of a less known strategy, so there you go. Alright, for the final strategy we have a pretty great one, something that I'm sure many of you have maybe thought about but just not attempted because maybe you're not confident that you could hit it or you don't know the exact positioning. But this can be really crazy play. Risky, but you know, could really give you an easy win if you do it correctly. So for this to be successful though, your opponent has to be a little bit further in the tree than usual. So typically people will teleport in the trees like this to prevent the flash. Sometimes if you're trapping them in there and maybe they're here, that's when this flash could potentially work. And yeah, it can really shock opponents. So if they are here, it won't work, which I'll show you guys. But let's just set this up. Let's say the opponent's right in here. They teleported after a flash. And again, an exception to the rule where if you're trying to clear land, you move the indicator toward the land, you know, just because you want to be able to clear those leaves, you know, and if you have the indicator over here, it's not going to clear everything. So that's an exception to the rule. You aim the flash just kind of directly into the player, and boom, sinks. Really cool strategy, right? And yeah, I'll just show you guys too. If they are too far into the tree, or if they're not far enough into the tree, if they make a smart teleport, this won't quite work. So let's say they're like right here. Maybe you want to try to use flight for this. You know, just get right up against them. Kill the tree. And the problem is, this flash doesn't quite reach. It might. I tested it before and it didn't work, but we can see. Yeah, so that last few pixels of the leaves, doesn't quite reach because the player was too far out of the tree. But if they're a little bit closer, you can pull this out, and it wasn't rocket science. I just kind of faced the indicator onto the player, pretty much this angle, right? All I did was that. I mean, any of you guys can do that, it's not that hard. It's just about recognizing, okay, is this player in a position where I can do this? Or if they're not, then you're just gonna fail if you try it. So anyway, that was the final strategy, number 15. Hope you guys found this helpful, and I'll just get straight to this bonus clip. There's a scene in the thumbnail where I had a flash that I want to show you guys. That was pretty cool, so I'll get right into that. Alright, real quick before we get to the thumbnail flash, just wanted to show you guys another bonus angle that I forgot about. So the way that this works is sometimes players will teleport in areas where they know that they can't get flashed one direction, so they can't get flashed to the right here. But they also know that the player can't really get situated to the right of them to be able to flash them off to the left. But there's actually a really unintuitive angle that you can use, which is either the extend here or the extend 2 ticks to the left. And you're gonna do this like into the player. So it looks really unintuitive, but it actually pops the player up a 45-degree angle to the left. And this will actually sync. All you have to do is just, align it 2 ticks to the left, sometimes 1 tick depending on the angle, and then just click, and boom, there it goes. I'll just show it to you guys again one more time, in just an area that, you could do a normal flash, but just for the purposes of demonstration, you can do this while hugging the player. Again, you just go either 1 or 2 ticks, so we'll do 1 tick this time, and it pops them up above all this terrain to sync them. So yeah, great cool little angle that not a lot of people use. I haven't seen many use it at all in unrateds or rateds, so there you have it. Alright everyone, the faded flash from the thumbnail. Let's see if this is possible. Looks pretty tricky, right? But actually you're able to use the risky extend angle that I was talking about earlier, 1, 2, 3, 4, and this will pop the opponent at a very high angle upward and sync them. Let me just move the camera so you guys can see. Alright, so you just line up the player with the opponent, 1, 2, 3, 4, click, and just barely skims that edge of the tree. What a flash. God tier flash. Hopefully all of you guys become a flash god from this tutorial. I had a lot of fun making it. Please do chime in with the comments if you have any questions. If you want to practice with me, play with me in game, practice some of these angles, I am totally down. And like and subscribe if you love this type of content. I'd really be interested in making tutorials on spells like Glide, Whip, maybe Dark Knight, just to kind of help new players who maybe haven't been playing Arcanists for 10, 15 years. And just to kind of recap this tutorial, Flash, it can be a great addition to any book to give yourself momentum if you go first, if your opponent maybe slips up on their positioning, and you can also use it to dig to your opponent if they're hiding. And you don't have to understand the exact physics of the game, but the best thing you can do is just keep practicing. Test out different angles, test out different positions, and just practice all these flashes, and you might eventually find an angle that you've never been able to test out before. And who knows, maybe you'll discover it in rated, and then you'll surprise your opponent and get a surprise win because you tried a new angle. So with practice, many of the angles will become second nature to you guys, How I was able to learn these is just practice. So just get into those unrateds, and yeah, sometimes they're gonna fail, but you just gotta accept it. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed these 15 strategies and this Arcane Flash tutorial, and I will see you on the next video. Peace out.